Everybody knows that Paris has undergone a huge urbanist transportation transformation in recent years, and it feels like it became one of Europe's great bike cities overnight. But you may not know the story behind that story, and that is a story of the power of citizens and advocates to make change in their city. All that and croissants.
But to really understand the scale and the scope of this change, I got a list of all of the bike lane projects that are happening in Paris in the last year, and I went on a mission to ride all of them.
Let's get into it. Stop number one is this cobblestone street that half of which has been turned over to cyclists. Number two is this separated bike lane that goes all the way around this roundabout. Number three is this bike lane. Number four, I think this is a school street. So there's kind of a popular story around Paris's transformation that goes a little bit like this. Back in 2014, Paris elected a new mayor. Her name was Anne Hidalgo, and she had this vision for Paris. Bam! She started making some big changes around cycling, including removing cars from that famous road beside the River Seine and turning it over to pedestrians and cyclists. Then everybody thought she was crazy and she'd only last one term because, you know, everyone drives a car and everybody hates bike lanes. But you know what? She won again. And as the Olympics approached, she doubled down on this idea. And whammo, here we are, Paris cycling city. But that's the Hollywood version, and it sort of roughly is true. But there is a sort of behind the scenes story. What's true is that the mayor had this vision for the city and she had the political clout and skills and courage to get it done. But as we've seen in many other cities, it takes a lot more than just political courage to get big changes like this made. Number five is a separated unidirectional bike lane. Another nice separated bike lane around a roundabout and just off of a park, and a croissant. Number seven, this separated bike lane that was such relief because I just passed through the giant intersection that was the scariest I've been here in Paris, and only to be greeted by someone parking in the bike lane. Number eight is this sort of separated bike lane on this route that has a tram that runs over grass, which makes you think, why don't all trams run on grass? That's great. Number nine, is this a full lane just for bikes? 11, 12, Joan of Arc, croissant. Number 13, bike lane. 14, number 15.
After the early excitement of Anne Hidalgo's promises for ambitious building of bike lanes, cyclists and advocacy groups were excited. But things didn't exactly get off to a roaring start. One of the advocacy groups, known as Paris en selle, which means Paris in the saddle, was getting worried that after a couple of years, very little progress had been made. Paris en selle spokesperson Marion Soulet told me that after 2 years, only about 4% of the promised bike lanes had been built. So the advocacy group had an idea, and they started building a digital tool.
And what they built was this, the Observatoire de Plan Vélo. This was a tool to mark the city's progress towards those stated goals. And every few months, they've been updating it. So check this out. They marked down every bike lane construction project that has begun. They track the progress of those bike lane projects, and they update it with this progress chart showing how far they are to accomplishing the city's stated goals. I think this is really cool. They're holding the city accountable in a way that's simple and easy to understand.
I think without citizen advocacy groups, we would not have what we have now in Paris.
16, 17, check out 18. Got the whole street. Number 19. Number 20.
That was a big moment, but it wasn't the only thing that advocates in Paris were doing to help fuel its growth into a great bike city.
Do you see this map? It looks like a subway map, but it's actually a map of bike routes in Paris. But it was designed to look like a subway map because subway maps are easy to understand. At a glance, you get it instantly. When I look at this map, what I see is a network of bike lanes that sort of play into a bigger vision of how to get around the city. For comparison's sake, take a look at this map from the city of Calgary, where I live. This looks like a disjointed, piecemeal kind of mess, right? And that's kind of because that's kind of what it is. We have some great places for cycling in the city, but it's definitely not a connected network. So back to Paris. After Anne Hidalgo's initial push towards cycling, where she invested 150 million euros to expand the bike network to 300 kilometers, it felt like things were slowing.
And in Paris, an election was coming. And Paris en selle had managed to create a candidates forum about cycling where they saw an opportunity not only to pin down each candidate and their positions on cycling, but maybe even get them competing to be known as the best bike mayor candidate. But to get that going, they needed something big and ambitious, but also easy to understand. So they got together, and just prior to the candidates forum, they released this map to the media. This, they said, was the vision they wanted to see for cycling in Paris.
They made sure it was feasible, yes, but they also wanted to make it simple and easy for everybody to understand. And so they made it look like something everyone gets. They made it look like a subway map. And you know what? It kind of worked. This easy to understand vision for the future kind of caught on.
As it was just before COVID-19, in fact, it was the only big event of the electoral campaign, because then it was locked down. And so all the pictures of the candidate on stage, that was pictures of our bike event. So really, it has a great impact, and it has done a lot in having a second term that is really focused on bike.
Not only did it become an election issue, but I think it also helped communicate the idea that for everyday people to use bikes in a busy city, there really needs to be a truly connected, comprehensive network that gets them where they need to go.
Some people are afraid of biking in this junction or in this part where there is not at all any infrastructure. So we really need it to be continuous and to be everywhere, to map the city like we do for buses, even for cars and for metropolitan.
21. This is number 22. 23. Project number 24. 25. 26. 27. 28. 29. 30. Over there somewhere. 31.
What struck me about all this was just how important the role of advocates have been in the huge changes that Paris has undergone. Marion thinks that what was effective wasn't so much the individual tactics, but that they saw the opportunities and used them to advocate for change. When there was a metro strike, they showcased how important bike lanes could be. When COVID hit and cities started building bike lanes to help people get out of their homes safely, they made sure those lanes were made permanent. When the Olympics were coming to Paris in 2024, they planted the idea that it was the perfect opportunity for more cycling, and then they held the city accountable.
I think you have to really try to take advantage of each moment. The election, okay, but COVID-19, Olympic Games, everything where bike, which is a very resilient means of transportation, can be helpful because, for example, the Olympic Games in Paris, first there were nothing done for bike, it was not a problem. Then with COVID-19 there were worries about the transportation networks and will it be enough to transport everybody, and Parisians were cycling, so they wanted to go in the Olympic Games with a bike. You need to size every moment.
33. 34. 35. 36. That means no entry except bikes. 37. 38. Okay, there we go. So I made it to about 40 different projects. Now these are not all new projects. Some of them were new bike lanes, some of them were just continuations of projects that had started in previous years, but the scale of this is pretty remarkable. Now, not every bike lane I rode on today was perfect. I mean, getting from project to project, I was riding on some bike lanes that were just paint. Getting through some of those giant roundabouts was still harrowing in some cases to me, but generally it was pretty incredible to see how much change is happening here so quickly. Most of these bike lane projects are protected. In some cases, the width of them is like half of the street, and so there's ample space for masses of people moving around, and there are masses of people on bikes almost everywhere I went today. So it's really, really remarkable on a couple of levels. For one, I just think it's great for us in cities, especially in North America, where we have so much road space. To see change in an older, denser, narrower, more crowded city like Paris just means like there's no reason this can't happen in pretty much every city in the world. If it's happening here, your city can do it too. And also how quickly it's happening. I mean, it's just a handful of years that we're seeing this major transformation. You don't have to talk about this stuff for 10 years. You know, it works, just get it done. But I also find it really interesting how this change has been encouraged and pushed and held accountable by citizens and advocates. On one level, I think this is just very French. The French are famous for taking to the streets when they get mad about anything, but it seems like this is a case where that accountability is really being put into action. They are really holding the government accountable to its word and making sure this stuff is actually getting done. And on another level, I think it shows just how important like citizens and advocates are to big changes like this. Yes, you need visionary politicians. Yes, you need that political courage to make this kind of change happen. But after that, you need people to keep working to make sure that this change gets done in the right way. Now, I hear from citizens in cities all over the place who are working so hard to get this stuff done, and I know how difficult it is. It's thankless work, it's drudgery, it's going to meetings and saying the same things to the different people, and sometimes the same people, over and over and over again. It's arguing with people who have bad arguments, who make the same points that have been debunked over and over again. So I have so much respect for those people who are doing that work, and I just like, here's a heartfelt thank you from me to all of you who are doing that work. And so I think seeing how important citizens and advocates have been to this massive transformation here in Paris should be an encouragement. I think it's really exciting to see it. Like, this work matters. We have to do this. The work you're doing is really important. It will make a difference. Oh, and I've got a fresh croissant. So what do croissants have to do with all of this, like I promised earlier? Well, nothing. I just wanted an excuse to eat lots of croissants. Mission accomplished. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.